Hi everyone, Zoe here. I'm in my little editing corner of Survive Mistakes HQ today because I got a strange email this week, quite an unusual one for me, reporting to be from an individual working for a TV production company. So, like most reasonable people, I assumed it was a massive scam. I emailed the company the person was working for, I checked out their website, checked out some of their TV shows, and even contacted a few people that worked with before. Turns out that was probably genuine. They told me they'd seen the YouTube channel, wanted to talk about some of my content and some of my projects, and could I pass on some contact information so we could set up a date and time. So, did all that. I'm still waiting for that phone call. Now, I chased it up a few times over emails, and at the minute it's the weekend, so I'm going to be chasing it up tomorrow when it's a working day. But it got me thinking. I don't know what that TV production company wanted to talk to me for. I'm not a particularly popular YouTuber, you've seen my subscriber count, and there are plenty of other people that are UK based that are doing bushcrafting, survivalism, emergency prepping and planning videos. So, why me? Did they want me to screen test for a TV show? Did they want to use some of my clips as part of a compilation for some show they're doing about YouTube personalities? I've no idea. But it got me thinking. What makes a good survival-based TV show? And what makes a bad one? And when I thought about this question, one kept coming to my mind that you guys probably haven't heard of. It's the 2010 History Channel TV show called Apocalypse Man. Now, Apocalypse Man is a TV show that wasn't picked up for a full season. It was a pilot, and if the pilot isn't picked up by a network, it doesn't get turned into a full production TV show. And that's quite common in TV production land, from what I can gather. And because it was only shown one time in 2010 on the History Channel, a lot of people haven't heard of it. So I wanted to take a moment to have a look at it. Let's see what makes it successful, let's see where it has failings. So let's watch Apocalypse Man.
The threat of global catastrophe has never been greater. The chain of events that could unravel our society could come from anywhere and without warning. Imagine a world without government, food, water, or power. Homeland Security tells us to prepare for 72 hours after a major disaster. But what happens if there is no Homeland Security? No law, no one to help you. If you survived a catastrophic disaster, you would probably emerge into a very different world.
Everything will have changed, and I mean everything. The people you might meet, where you get food, water, how you make shelter, they either won't exist, or they can't be trusted. But the resources you will need to survive are out there. I'll show you how to find them.
So there we go. There's the show's premise. It's a full-on STHF style scenario. It's the apocalypse. We can't guarantee after 48 hours the World Health Organization, the Red Cross, or any governmental branch or charity is going to swoop in after 48 hours and help us. And Rudy is going to show us the survival skills we need for that full-on apocalypse social breakdown style scenario. Now, I don't know much about Rudy. Apparently he's in things like Generation Kill and Ultimate Survival Alaska. Now, I've never seen those shows, but as a host, this initial outset, I quite like him. I find when he talks to the camera, he talks to you, and you'll notice it as we go on watching, that he talks to the audience. It's not just him surviving, it's us, it's you. And I find that really endearing, and that's not something I see in a lot of survival TV shows. So, let's keep watching.
The first place I'm going to head to is the nearest city. Even after a major disaster, survival basics can be found there in the most surprising places. Our mission is to locate them.
He's going towards a city. Now that's not inherently bad by itself, but in this survival scenario, we don't know what's caused the apocalypse. Is it a civil breakdown? Is it a nuclear war? Is it a virus or infection? Is it zombies? Is it aliens? We don't know. And he's running towards a city. which is a major population centre and has a quite high risk of whatever hell's happened still being around. So that's the major issue with this that I've seen so far, and quite a lot of criticism from people online. He's going towards a city when he was in a relatively safe place. Now, I don't have a problem with this, because I don't know what the scenario is they're playing with, I don't know what resources he's got, I don't know how hungry, I don't know what's forcing this decision. The thing I do know is, it's not been framed very well. If this was the entire show, then that's a problem. If this is a single episode where Rudy's going to teach us how to do urban survival, then I can forgive it. But the setup of apocalypse has happened, I'm off to a city, yeah, it could use a bit of work just to give that clarification.
When you're in the open, move quickly. If there are other survivors, they could be a threat. Keep off the main highways and stick to less traveled routes, like rail lines.
When society breaks down, people will be desperate, they'll be hungry, they'll be disoriented. If they see you, they'll want to fight you for what you got. So you've got to blend, you've got to hide, deceive, camouflage your movements, in and out of the city. So if you do run into somebody, you run into them on your terms.
So that's interesting. The strong focus is on evasion, which in line with Rudy's military training is going to be based on SIRI. So SIRI is a military acronym for Survival, Evasion, Resistance and Escape. Basically, if you are a serviceman or woman and you are in enemy territory or a place you're not supposed to be, the idea is that you can escape, avoid detection and do your basic survival needs while being on the move or on the run, or in such a way that people tracking you or trying to recapture you don't know where you are. So, an interesting focus. I approve.
Civilization breaks down and martial law is put into place. Bridges will be raised or blocked to limit people's movement. We can't swim the river. Treatment plants, sewage plants, they're going to be shut down. There could be all kinds of caustic chemicals and poisons in there. Not a good idea. So you've got to figure another way around.
I know it looks crazy, but with proper procedure, it can be done. Using an old tire iron I found, I'm going to improvise a grappling hook. With the rope I've got in my pack, I'm going to make a simple ladder to climb up onto the other side.
It's a butterfly knot.
The butterfly knots will act as a rope ladder and let me climb up once I've swung out.
Great handhold, great foothold, equal tension, both up and down, very secure.
This tire iron will make an ideal grappling hook.
Twist.
Tire irons and crowbars like this will be easy to find and they have 1,000 uses. They easily earn their weight in my pack.
All right, you're looking for a really good anchor point. This looks like a great anchor point, not too far away. We're gonna try to get it in there, give it a tug. If we've got some positive purchase with this grappling hook, we're good to go. That feels positive. You gotta have confidence in your abilities.
The rope would be too thin to climb without butterfly knot handholds. Keep focused where your hands and feet are placed and think about your next move. Don't ever let your concentration falter. It's a long way down to the river.
Right. The bridge sequence. Taking my survival head elsewhere, that yes, rivers can have those factors and there are alternative ways to cross them. My common sense head elsewhere of why the hell would you risk serious injury if other alternatives were available? From a purely made for TV moment, that looks pretty cool. From a survival and common sense perspective, that's freaking dangerous. That's reckless behaviour that could injure yourself for very little benefit, using a crowbar and as a grappling hook, which they call a tire iron for some reason. But no, it's ridiculous. It looks cool, and you can see from the way he's moving his hips, he's swinging on the rope for effect, and there's at least 3 different camera angles filming it. But the bit that gets me more than anything else, that this was made for TV and not for common sense or what Rudy would actually do in this scenario, is in the credits. So skipping very quickly to the end credits, you guys won't be able to see it because of the poor quality of my download, but we have someone credited with rope safety and a survival consultant. So that makes me think that yes, this sequence was really made just for TV.
Night's coming in fast. You need to make shelter. These broke down buildings, they look scary. But the light's fading. You need to get some cover, concealment, some shelter. This flashlight with fresh batteries, it's gonna save your life. Keeping it going, however, that's gonna be a challenge. Every time you move into a new area, you do a security sweep. You don't know who's been here, you don't know who still may be here. You carry your flashlight just like so you can use it as a weapon if somebody does pop out around a corner with a bad attitude.
I've never had to bonk anyone over the head with a flashlight. However, I do have a personal experience that means that I keep them in my EDC kit, my urban kit, my get home kit, and my country kit. I have a flashlight in every single one of my kits. A few years ago, I did a zombie survival airsoft event. It was in a disused building, it was 2 stories high, and there were 3 separate teams, and we had to go around and do objectives where there were actors or stooges and avoid zombies. There is actually video footage of this. There's a YouTuber called Airsoft Wombat who actually filmed it, and you'll see me very briefly stepping out of a zombie in the most casual manner possible. Now, because of that experience, we had a group of 10 people, and between those 10 people we had 2 flashlights. If you were not one of the people with a flashlight, you could not see anything. Night sight was not an issue. There was no ambient lighting whatsoever. I fell over crates, pallets, tripped over doorsteps, and basically the people with the flashlights, they were gods. And I can't, that's my personal experience of pure darkness. I've been caving and I've done a few other things in caves, but for me, that zombie survival experience, if it didn't teach me anything else, it taught me the importance of flashlights, because I cannot express enough. If it was not illuminated by the light, no matter if it was direct focus or brief sort of illumination, you could not see a single thing. Flashlights, exceptionally important to prevent mechanical injury.
It's not the Hilton, but it's gonna do good for us.
Now it's time to build a fire, and I'm gonna use the steel wool I found to start it.
Let's fray it up a bit. There we go, because as these little baby wires get pulled out from the big mass, they're gonna catch a lot easier. And now here's the trick. All right, you're gonna take this power source, this battery, 9 volt, and you're gonna put it to this steel wool. Make sure you don't stow these supplies together, because it'll go up. Just like this.
This is known as joule heating. The fine filaments of the steel wool glow red hot when they come into contact with an electrical power source like a battery. Great for starting fires.
Get some kindling.
Okay, here's a criticism, and it's one I don't feel particularly comfortable saying. I'm not a professional camerawoman. When I do stuff for YouTube, there's a camcorder, there's a tripod, a couple of microphones. It's what I need for what I do. It suits my purposes. There's a reason you haven't seen me doing any nighttime camping shots or any setting up shelters, because my camera does not have the capability to do nighttime footage. It doesn't have a night vision mode, it doesn't have illumination, so I work with the sort of boundaries that the capacity of my camera can do. So what's going on here? These nighttime shots are really hard to focus on. Admittedly, this is a rip, and then it's been ripped again by me before you guys see it and compressed, so it's not as originally seen. But it's like a movie fight scene. It's edited and chopped and changed and out of focus so often, it's really hard to follow. Like I say, I'm not a professional, but I can see bad camera work and I can go, how did that get through?
Now she's starting to go. All right, so I'm covering up my light so that from the outside, people are not going to be able to see.
The final stage is to cover the top of the fire with damp cardboard, which should soak up most of the smoke.
There we go. From a couple paces away, people are not going to see the glow of a fire. And this is something that you're going to build up so you can keep yourself hidden and you can keep yourself safe.
In this building, and in many others, there is a way out you've probably never considered. But in an emergency, it could save your life.
Great, this is exactly what we're looking for. Now, keep in mind, without power, the elevator is going to be a lot tougher to open on this side than on the other side. But normally there's some kind of catch. They're designed so that if there's an emergency, people can escape them. Let's give it a go.
I'm leaving the outskirts and moving towards the city center with one main goal: finding a place that could become my new base. But before I go, here's a great way to leave a building: through the elevator shaft. In an emergency, this trick could get you out without being spotted.
These elevator shafts, they're one of the strongest constructed elements in a building. This is what you're going to use to get down. This makes a very stealthy way in or out of a building. Let's do this.
This looks crazy, but the technique to get down is easier than you think. There's a gap of about a foot. Just reach out with both hands and commit.
Make sure your feet are pressing tight against the cable as well. This will give your arms a break.
To give you an idea of how strong the cables are, a typical freight elevator like this one carries about 8,000 pounds. Each of these 4 cables can hold that load alone.
The elevator sequence. We call them lifts here in the UK because they lift you up and down. Anyway, see my complaints for the fire starting sequence. I could not see what was going on. Admittedly, this is a rip, and then I've compressed it in my video compression software, and then YouTube's compressed it, so the quality you guys are seeing is probably a lot lower than what I'm currently seeing. But still, I can't tell what's going on. Why not do the cliche movie thing of snapping some glow sticks and chucking them down there to illuminate it, make it look pretty for the camera? Because at the minute, I can't see it, because the camera can barely see it. From a survival mindset, never considered going down an elevator shaft before. Never considered it because it'd probably kill me. Break my legs, my spine, my skull. It's freaking dangerous. I don't have the skill set to go shimmying down some cables, and I'm well aware of that. Unless some serial killer cannibal is chasing me with a chainsaw, I'm probably not going to consider it, because from my perspective and my mindset watching this now, it's reckless and dangerous for TV. It's made to look fun and entertaining and pretty for TV, and if they actually had the ability to film in darkness, it might look a bit prettier.
I'm moving towards downtown. That should give us the best chance to find a more secure base. But since the city has a residential district along the way, I want to check it out. Many people's natural instinct is to leave, take as many of their belongings as they can, and head for the roads. It's called the flight response. Looters then fill the vacuum. But a place like this could still offer rich pickings. Look out for houses with windows or doors intact, or even better, still locked.
I know it's totally counterintuitive that we're going to break this door in, But this is not somebody's home anymore. This is your survival. This is your way to your next mission. There's some good tools, resources, maybe food that we could use in here.
So, about to break into someone else's property that we don't own to get supplies we need to further our own survival. But be cautious of looters because they're also around. Well, if I'm stealing stuff from someone else, I'm a looter. Regardless of whether I need it for survival or not, I'm still taking other people's property. That's, if we're talking about the breakdown of society, then law does not exist, or in its current state, it does not exist. However, from a moral perspective, unless I know those people are dead, or aren't coming back ever, do I steal their stuff? Does breaking into their house mean that I'm now a target for someone coming hunting after me? The tone of it is strange. We talk about being dangerous of looters on this show without addressing the fact that we're actually looters ourselves, and the double standards there of not quite going, we're the bad guys, it gets to me a little bit, that one.
When you're making an entry, it's about speed, surprise, violence of action. You need to be ready for anything, and I mean anything, that's on the other side of this door. Let's do this. You see this? Forced entry. I don't know if that was a month ago, a week ago. It could have been 5 minutes ago. So you got to think about things like that. You got to be looking for signs of movement, signs of people. People could be our friend, they could also be our enemy. If things fall apart and civilization is in pieces, you can only rely on one person first, and that's you.
Basements are a great place to scavenge because that's where many families store their emergency supplies.
Here we go. This is freaking treasure. This is sustainability. We used to say chow is continuous. It's good.
Cans of food aren't indestructible. Seals can break, air can get inside, introducing bacteria and diseases like botulism.
Oh, listen to this. You hear that? Rotten. Obviously, air has gotten in there, and this is a no-go. All right, let's throw this good stuff in our rucksack. Let's check out the garage. Oh, this is a real good piece of gear. Bicycle pump. Sterno. This can be fuel. This could be fire starting material. This has a lot of different uses. Seal's good. It's busted up, but we still got some good stuff inside of there. So this is going with us for sure.
So, basic introduction to scavenging. Now, scavenging is a really crucial skill, and especially in an urban environment, I love scavenging. I pick up every single lighter I come across. I go into abandoned buildings, abandoned warehouses, and I love looking at stuff and going, in my survival mindset, what can I use that for? Can I turn that shard of glass into a cutting tool? Can I turn that extension cord into cordage? Can I make a fire starter by stripping back the wire and putting electrical pulse through it? I love scavenging. So, although this isn't the most in-depth one, we've not looked at, water or unusual places to find wood or copper. We've not found the sort of really hidden places that people take for granted in residential properties. But as a basic introduction, in the time they've got to show it on TV, that's not a bad introduction.
In a world with no power, internet, or cell phones, information could come from a place you'd never expect. And that's where I'm heading now.
Shh. Library.
So, information is really important, as I've alluded to earlier. We're probably not going to know what caused an apocalyptic style scenario. Word of mouth, messengers, postal service, we're not going to know. Just society, if it's going to collapse, it's going to go. And we'll see tertiary effects, and then it'll just happen. So, libraries are really good places for survival equipment. Things like The Day After Tomorrow, the film. It taught us that, you know, books can be used for fuel, insulation, as well as informational purposes. But also libraries have other sort of resources, be it the wood, metal. And in one of my favourite clips in AMC's version of The Walking Dead, the TV series, not the comic, the survivors go into a library, and there's a whole sequence without any dialogue where they take water from the toilet system, where they boil it to sanitize it, they take the books and cover up the windows so they're not being observed, and they even remove the silk stitching on an old hardback book and use it to suture a wound. And I really love that in that universe, these survivors are so knowledgeable and so resource gathering mindset that they can go into a place like that and then use the resources they find. Obviously, realism, it is a TV show, it is just a sequence, basically a montage of survival skills, but for me, it really sticks out as one of the best scenes in AMC's The Walking Dead. So, what's Rudy going to do in a library?
You'd expect that libraries would be an immediate target. But in New Orleans, one of the few resources not to be attacked during the crisis was the City Library Service. Not one of the libraries across the district reported being looted. After Katrina, with internet and cell phones down, libraries became a life-saving service, providing information that couldn't be got anywhere else. Think back to grade school when you probably learned the Dewey Decimal System.
912, Mike 32.
That's how books are cataloged, placed in a specific repeatable order that makes them easy to find.
This is what we're looking for. After there's a global disaster, how you think about movement, how you think about getting around from point A to point B completely changes. You start considering stealth, sneaky, surreptitious. This is a sewer map. And this could save your life.
Going across open ground could be dangerous, but there's a subterranean route.
There's a highway running right into the city underneath our feet. It's called the sewer system.
The manhole covers can weigh upwards of 100 pounds, but there's a simple method for lifting them. You'll need a bit of cordage like this old shoelace and a short piece of metal thin enough to fit through the pick hole.
All right, this is a simple prusik. See the bite? This part that goes over and locks the rope down. It's also really easy to take off once we get this manhole off.
You'll need some extra leverage.
Like I said, these things are pretty heavy.
I'm going to have to take his word for it. I don't have any practical experience on lifting manhole covers or using the sewer network outside of when it's connected to a toilet. But, you know, I'm understanding that some of the dangers of using sewers could possibly be addressed here. You know, methane gas buildup is a serious issue in old sewer systems. Slip hazards, mechanical injury. It sounds dramatic, but even drowning and floods, you know, they're concerns when you're in a network that isn't really made for human habitation or human transit outside of short-term maintenance and with proper safety equipment and communication.
Sewers serve as drainage for the road network above ground and follow almost the exact same route. The map I found in the library can lead us safely downtown.
Here we are. We've got two major intersections and then a dogleg, and we'll be at our destination.
You can expect sewers will be a very different place from today. They'll no longer be in use, and with repeated flushing from storm drainage, they'll be much cleaner. You wouldn't want to set up home here, but it will make them into an effective underground highway. After 9/11, many cities adopted new security measures. To block potential terrorist attacks, manhole covers were tagged so any attempts to tamper with them could be monitored. Some were even welded shut.
I don't see any markings. I'm gonna give this one a shot.
To set up a home base, we're on our way to a place you'd never expect. A hospital.
Why? Why go to a hospital in an apocalypse-style situation? You know, even on non-survival days, they're full of infection and disease. Throw in an apocalypse-style event, and you've got infection, contamination, Possible corpses rotting in every corridor and room. Scratch yourself on a nail and you are possibly going to get very, very sick. Hospitals are not a good place to be. They are dead zones, quite literally. What possible justification has Rudy got for going to a hospital apart from he's got a production crew following him?
During a crisis, hospitals become the focus of intense hostility.
Places like hospitals will be on the front lines. Desperate people stop at absolutely nothing to get a hold of medicine. They'll ransack the hospitals. But what you'll be counting on is they're going to overlook a major resource that's staring at them right in the face. And that's the ability to make their own power.
Every hospital has a backup generator designed to work even when the entire power grid fails. Getting it started could be the key to survival.
And that's what you're going to do. You're going to find a way into that backup generator, and you're going to make a base here.
So one thing I've established, apart from I don't want to go anywhere near a hospital, is that Rudy really likes breaking windows with his mag light.
When Katrina struck, some of the city's hospitals and other healthcare resources were destroyed or inoperable. The number of patients who needed help far exceeded supplies and personnel. The situation became so desperate that within hours, pharmacies and clinics were looted and raided. Drugs and medicines were only available through a black market economy. But I'm looking for something the looters might have overlooked: the backup power generator.
Before you get power, you don't want to light this place up like a Christmas tree.
Switch all the fuses off. Lights in a building would be like a beacon in a pitch-black city, which could attract unwanted attention.
Now let's get down to the generator. The backup generator looks in good shape. Doesn't look like anyone's been tampering with it. All right, you see here, selector switch is on auto. That means when there's a power outage and the grid goes down, this generator kicks back on and takes up the slack. So if you can get some fuel and get it fired up, you can start making electricity and building a base.
So we've gone to a hospital to have the ability to generate our own electricity. Okay, so one lesson we can learn from Apocalypse Man is already have the capability to do that in your buggy in supplies. Have your trickle chargers powered by water or air, or even go old school and cliche and hook up one to the suspended push bike and have that ability to trickle charge batteries that you can already have, so you don't have to go into hospitals and play around with generators.
Finding fuel won't be easy, but it's there if you know where to look, like in underground tanks at gas stations. Most generators run on diesel, which makes things easier.
Don't you mean diesel?
When you're looking for fuel, diesel is going to be your best bet. This is it. In America, about 5% of the cars are diesel, so all the gasoline's going to be gone, but you're going to have a good chance of finding a little bit of diesel fuel.
With no power on at the pumps, extracting fuel could be tricky. I'm going to try using the bike pump I found.
When you attach your hose, make sure that your attachment points are taped well. You got to have a good seal on this. So, putting all this together, it basically turns into a huge syringe.
Yeah, making a siphon pump is not a bad survival skill, although having a dependency on a bicycle pump isn't particularly great. If you're going to do it for Joe Public who knows nothing about survival skills or survivalism, then showing the old-fashioned method of creating a manual seal and then using that to siphon fuel is probably going to be more useful.
And stay on the lookout for anything else you can use.
See that? It's a battery.
Car batteries can hold their charge for 12 to 18 months. But the beauty is, they're rechargeable.
If we can get this battery recharged, it'll be a force multiplier.
A force multiplier is any factor that can increase your effectiveness.
Not a bad haul.
With a charged car battery, you'll have the potential to get a vehicle running. which will dramatically improve your circumstances.
And car battery out of nowhere. Now, one of the issues I have with this show is, for want of a better term, the lack of honesty. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Only the most gullible of people watch television and think that, the person is going through these survival scenarios alone. That's why they always put the watermark at the beginning of the show saying these survival sequences are for educational purposes or simulated. I think that's why shows like Dual Survival really took off, or Survivor Man, not to be confused with Apocalypse Man, because they're very honest about the way they film things. They've got the format down, so they've got, this is the equipment I've got today, and this is the environment I'm in. And apart from a camera crew filming it and medical expert in the background, etc., it's very open about the fact that this thing had 3 different camera angles for the bridge climbing sequence, and it had a rope expert and a survival consultant in the credits. To just come across a resource like this, if they'd made the episode a little bit different, if they'd put that framing in the middle of this is the urban experience and these are the things I found, it would be a lot easier to swallow than car battery out of nowhere.
It may not be much fuel, but it should be enough to get the generator back up and running, at least for a short while.
Be as careful as you can. Remember, this is the most precious commodity. Fuel and power. Let's see if this works. Woo! You did it!
This is probably my favourite bit, that little woo I really like, and it comes across as really genuine. I don't know if it's for the cameras, but Rudy seems like he actually was pleasantly surprised by that, and he goes, "You did it." And it's what I mentioned earlier about that, bringing it all back to you. It's not just him, it's not just you on your armchair watching him, it's both of you. And I think if this had got picked up, I think that's the aspect I would have liked the most. That almost fourth wall breaking. Obviously he's not Deadpool, but when he does it, it actually seems to have almost an emotional connection, and I find that really endearing.
Woo! You did it! Alright, you got about 4 or 5 hours max to use to charge up batteries and to set up your base. So let's get going.
With the generator running, the car battery I found can now be charged.
All right.
And it's time to switch on the switches.
It's a good job he found that cheat sheet, or else he could be flicking switches at random and lighting the place up like a Christmas tree. Completely contradicting that thing he said earlier about not wanting to turn the power on and draw too much attention to yourself.
The security office makes an ideal home base, with a bonus. With the power back on, the entrances can be monitored with the closed-circuit television.
I know the entrances are being monitored by CCTV, but what about the people breaking their way through the windows with mag lights?
Now that we're safe, it's time to think again about food and water. Rain catchment on the roof is a great source of fresh water.
Your water's sterilized from boiling. And I know you gotta be hungry. Potluck's on the menu.
Without labels, you're just gonna have to get used to eating whatever you can get a hold of.
See what we got. Sweet corn. Tastes great. Cat food, green beans, or I don't know, some kind of potted meat. Let's see. All right. Vienna sausages. Kind of reminds me of my grade school lunches.
Right now, basic needs like food, water, and shelter are under control. But there's one thing that isn't.
Now let's play a game. Let's spot when the tone changes.
Imagine yourself in this world. Just the weight of the loneliness. I think that'd be crushing. When I was going through my POW school, I was on the run for a week. It was so hard, not just because I didn't have any food or any shelter, but because I was alone. And when I finally was captured
and I was put in this little 2x2 concrete cell. I've been tortured a bit and beat up a bit. Actually, it really saved me because I could hear one of my fellow brothers tapping on the cell next to me. And that human contact and that sign that I was not alone, it gave me hope. I know if this really happened to me, I'd have to keep driving on till I found someone, till I made some contact. I'd have to have the dream that we could rebuild, that I could rebuild. And I know I couldn't do it on my own.
Okay, that got a bit emotional. I've never met Rudy. I've never had any experience of being tortured or imprisoned against my will, or escape and evasion, or psychological torture. But that, I don't know if it's for cameras. I suspect it isn't, because that looks like a very, very human moment to me.
Without making contact with others, survival is pointless. I'd tell you what I'd want to do. I'd want to make contact by building a radio transmitter. I'd get to some high ground, make an antenna, and then I'd broadcast a signal. So we gotta think outside the box. That means remembering what might have survived. Shortwave radio. That's gonna be your best way of communicating after all else is gone. And there are places to find transmitters you wouldn't expect. Checkered cab. That's right, a taxi company. A taxi dispatch center could have just what we need. Remember to always move quickly and cautiously. It's more difficult to maintain an advantage in urban areas. Bingo. This is what we're looking for. This taxi cab dispatch center has all the communication gear we need. All right, let's see what we got here. Tape recorder, good to go. CBs, radios. All right, we've got a loose one. Might be busted. Gotta check it. And bingo, we're in business. All right. Handset, transmitter, power source, tape recorder. To increase the range of the transmitter, we need to get to higher ground. Rooftops and fire escapes allow you to cross a city undetected, and if you encounter threatening groups, you'll have the upper hand and the means of escape at your control.
That's some nice basic parkour manoeuvres there. It's not the first time Rudy's done it on camera, and it won't be the last for this show either, so keep an eye out for other parkour manoeuvres. You think Rudy's a Dying Light fan? In that video game, a parkour instructor takes up residence in a high-rise building and basically teaches the survivors of a quarantine zombie infested city how to use the rooftops as a major mode of transport. Very similar to what Rudy's saying, but clearly one of Rudy's skills here is his agility. Whether he does parkour, he's definitely got the ability and the upper body strength to get around, and it makes for a very impressive spectacle. I quite like it. Radio transmitters used by taxi companies are good on the ground for only a short distance. Getting to a higher, unobstructed point in the city will increase the distance by line of sight. The horizon from a 300-foot building will be about 25 miles. Before you can broadcast your message, you'll need to assemble your transmitting equipment. And we're ready to build. All right, this is our CB transmitter. We're gonna attach it to our main power source. It's 12-volt dry cell batteries. Tape it up, keep it neat, and this bad bear will last you. Let's fire this baby up. You should select channel 9. This is the channel monitored by the emergency services. If anyone will be listening, this is the channel that is most likely to be scanned. All right, channel 9. If
you look around from way up here, this has got to be the tallest building in this city. We'll be able to shoot our message all the way to the horizon. And that's about 26 miles out in any direction.
26 miles may not sound much, but the area you can cover with your transmission is over 2,000 square miles. With the aerial connected, we're ready to transmit.
All right, make sure everything's nice and tight.
Now, you have to record a message. This tape dictaphone is going to be ideal.
All right, the information you want to put on this is your name, your status, you're alone, and then what destination or where you're going to next. It's got to be a no-kidding terrain feature, a city, a town, a bridge, some specific intersection. Now, make sure that you get there a day prior, 24 hours, because you want to get there, settle into a hide site, observe the area, because if some people show up there, but they look shady, you don't want to meet with them. That'll give you a chance to stay away and eventually make your way on out of there.
So, unfortunately, I don't know much about radio communication. I do own a CB transmitter and a CB aerial, and used to use it in my car relatively frequently, which is quite rare for the UK. We don't have sort of the culture. But again, I'm seeing a bit of contradiction in terms. We have this fear of looters and staying hidden and keeping away from humanity, but then we're reaching out to them and telling them information about ourselves without any kind of deception. I don't think the show knows what tone it wants to go on. And I don't know if it's just me being pedantic, but it seems to be very conflicted about if we're trusting other humans or if we're fearing them. And it seems to, almost like a game of Pong, it seems to bat between the two different opposing viewpoints at different times. And I can say, maybe I'm looking into it too deeply. What do you think?
There is a story of hope amongst all the tragedy of Hurricane Katrina. Even after the communications breakdown, with no cellular connections or internet, with satellite TV down, a small army of amateur radio enthusiasts came to the assistance of thousands of stranded victims. They were operating on the citizen band shortwave frequency. They were even able to assist the authorities with their rescue effort.
New station, new station. This is Rudy Reyes. I'm alone and I'm on the move.
With your message on loop, it's time to make your rendezvous.
Wait. You're telling me you're looping audio on an analog cassette? You ever used an analog cassette? Unless his player has some kind of mechanism where it gets to one side and then automatically reverses or automatically rewinds, which does happen. It is a mechanism that quite a few of them have. How does he manage to make looping audio on analog? It is doable digitally. It's actually quite easy to do digitally. I can do it in a couple of minutes. But to do it on analog and without any digital equipment, he's going to have to record in both sides of that cassette with the same message. He's going to have to be up there for, 3 hours recording that. So how has he done looping audio on an analog cassette? I couldn't do that. Could you do that?
We've made a rudimentary transmitter and left a message trying to reach other potential survivors.
This is Rudy Reyes.
Back at my base at the hospital, I can use the battery I've charged to get a car going. But if you want to keep it going, you're going to need a specific kind of car.
This one, no good. No good. No. Wait. This old girl's gonna work for us. It's got something different than all the other cars do. They run on gasoline, she runs on diesel. Diesel engines are also super tough, super reliable, very rugged. Matter of fact, so rugged, we could even make our own fuel for this girl. You got the battery in. Let's see if we can hotwire this baby. All right, we cut these 2 wires. We also have to cut the brown one. Brown one is the starter. Now we could try to work this from the other side in the engine, but you want to be as low profile as possible all the time.
Especially when smashing a vehicle window with a mag light and slamming down the bonnet.
Expose them just a little bit more. Twist them together. And that's the sound of the power coming on. So we are just one step away from getting this girl up and running. Last but not least, stripping away this starter wire here. Touch them together. You hear that? We got wheels. You've got your girl running, but now you got to keep her running. You have no gas stations you can go to, so you're going to have to look for your own fuel or make your own fuel. I'm on the lookout right now for some restaurants, a fast food joint, something like that, that's got, you know, a grease trap, basically a grease trap. From that grease trap, we can refine that down to some really field expedient fuel to keep your vehicle running.
So, the car. Where was the car in the original plan to set up a home base in the hospital? You know, that bit they mentioned after the first commercial break. Where was getting a vehicle and establishing radio communication with the outside world as part of our plans? And why a car? Why not a pedal cycle? And are we not being covert anymore? Just driving a very noisy machine down the middle of the street? And now we'll look at making biodiesel? That's not a survival skill, that's a professional level, insanely difficult and complicated skill. I feel this show's gone off the rails a little bit here. It's losing focus quite badly, because, you know, seeing hot wiring on TV, that was quite interesting. I don't know if the car was lent out to the production company, if it was set up by someone else beforehand, but it's pretty impressive TV. But where does the focus on the car come from? Were the General Motors company funding this? It's just strange that suddenly we've gone from survival show to car. Yeah, where's the focus now?
This is what we're looking for.
Extracting filthy grease from this trap isn't everyone's idea of a good time, but this stuff is going to be like gold to you.
All right, let's get into it. Let's see. I want to try to scrape off the top of this white muck and get that kind of clean looking, well, I mean relatively clean looking oil here. Yeah!
You could use the grease in your engine as it is, but it would soon clog if you allowed it to cool. To make it run smoother, you're going to have to cook down the grease and find a covert place to light your fire.
Does that look like a covert fire to you? Unless they're using 100% dry wood, smoke, yeah, might not be an issue, but surely something like a Dakota fire pit is going to be a much more better solution than a big roaring open flame. Heck, the Dakota fire pit is actually taught in escape and evasion classes to military personnel. Can't see why they didn't go for that one. Unless this is an issue with TV production again, and a roaring fire is just mandated to look better on camera.
The grease needs heating to thin it out. Once it's hot enough, skim off any solid material on the surface.
How? How are you supposed to skim the top off of your oil when it's in a sealed container? One that presumably used to contain petrol or diesel, and it's on a roaring fire. Let's hope there's none left in there, shall we? And just, how are you supposed to skim the top off a sealed container like that? It feels like the narration that was done after the show was filmed had to fill in a lot of gaps.
To finish the process, you're going to need two chemicals that you can scavenge easily. They're found in drain cleaners you'd have under your sink and in your vehicle's antifreeze.
We've got our methanol, and we've got our lye. The methanol in antifreeze that you put in your gas tank, and then the lye you get in your basic household drain cleaner. Now, the ratios to this mixture for your field expedient biodiesel are 5 parts raw cooking fat, vegetable cooking fat, 1 part methanol. On this 1 part of methanol, you're going to take half a tablespoon in the methanol, shake it up real good. If you were in a laboratory condition, then we'd have centrifuge or something like that so that the mixture would be perfect, all impurities would be out. Same thing with the raw material up here. but we don't have the luxury of time or equipment. What's most important is that we create fuel. Fuel is so valuable to us. Vehicles, they're going to get mucked up with this, this concoction, but they're going to run. They may run 50 miles, they may run 100 miles, 200 miles. But the fuel is more important than the vehicle. We can find these anywhere.
Does the company that did the script for this have shares with the fuel company or something? Because they're talking about, yeah, we can find diesel cars anywhere. It's like, well, yeah, diesel cars are relatively common, but that doesn't mean that this concoction that you're making with stuff underneath your sink, which, as a prepper, I don't have either of these things underneath my sink. It just seems really strange. And yeah, you might be able to run your car on it, but when it conks out, that doesn't mean it's now going to be a 5-mile walk to the next diesel car, which may or may not have working tyres or an engine or the ability to hotwire it. It just seems a very strange statement to make, all for the purpose of showing this little sequence where we make biofuel.
Down the hatch. All right, half a tablespoon coming up. Like baking a cake, you just kind of guesstimate with a little bit of love. Looks good to me. Again, be careful, it's hot.
The methanol acts as a stabilizer, and the lye binds both the cooking oil and the methanol together. Allow the mixture to cool before pouring it into the tank.
All right, this is going to be our filter. Making sure it's going in there. About the most precious thing we have out here. We've got a full tank of gas. We're good for 100 miles, at least.
I'm not an expert when it comes to siphoning from vehicles, but I did like the fact they use a cloth as a filter for basically the impurities in the grease. Bit of a shame it cut away to basically a cone or something being used as a funnel that wasn't there before. That's obviously to disengage the anti-roll protection for basically whenever a vehicle rolls over, it stops the fuel coming straight back out and being more of a hindrance. So that's a mechanism that's in most modern vehicles that you need to get past if you're going to be putting fuel in.
How you survive after a disaster is up to you. Depends on what kind of person you are. Depends on what kind of world you find yourself in.
You could stay, eke out some kind of survival, but for me, I would want something more. I'd want to see what else is out here. More importantly, I would want to see who else is out here.
So there we go, that's the end of the show. The final shot with the credits is him essentially driving out of the city. So, what did you think? That's Apocalypse Man. It was a pilot, like I say, that wasn't picked up. It was produced by the History Channel in 2010. Some of the advantages? Whoever's filmed it, although the darkness stuff is a real sticking point for me, I do think they've done really well. It was filmed in Detroit, and to show sort of that abandoned cityscape without catching any cars, any audio from airplanes, it's really quite a good achievement, because that's a nice little bite of the apocalypse. Disadvantages? It seems to lose the idea of what it wants. You know, it talks about escape and evasion, but then we're seeking out people without any sort of education on how we should use our judgment about telling a scavenger from another survivor. And there's that very big sort of mental barrier in the middle between who's a helpful human and who's a dangerous human. And the survival skills we get taught, there's a couple of knots in there which are quite useful. There's the grappling hook, which I would have just done it straight up rather than across like the underside of the bridge if it was just me. What else we got? Fire starting with steel wool. I cut out the clip where he finds it. I didn't think it was particularly needed. And also he appears to have a 9-volt battery just out his pocket. Pretty simple survival skill, pretty well known from quite a few people that are in the survival community. What else? Taking over the security office at the hospital. Yeah, again, with the justification for television, it makes sense. And I do like the moment he has with the camera where he comes across very human about his personal experiences there. And for me, that's the most important part, because it shows him doing the survival stuff. You know, he's eating a meal, he's cooking using that fat, he's getting water. You know, that's like a quick montage of actual survival stuff, and that sort of round the campfire kind of moment that we all have where we'd whittle our things or entertain ourselves with an MP3 player or something. I think that's like the most human and down-to-earth part of it. Unfortunately, after that point, it goes a bit off the rails. You know, going and finding a vehicle because you found a battery that you can charge in the hospital off the generator, to then deciding we're going to take a vehicle and make fuel for it. It's, yeah, that I can't understand why that happened. But overall, you know, with that extra time of framing and going, this is our urban survival episode, I think it'd benefit. It just really needed to pick a tone. Other advantages apart from the cityscape, Rudy's great. I really like him. He's really photogenic. He's not your usual sort of survival instructor, and that sort of way he dresses the camera, I find that really nice and endearing. Disadvantages, I don't know. With Rudy, I don't know who was in charge of some of these ideas, because some of them are reckless and quite dangerous. Was it a TV production company? Was it a History Channel? Was it Rudy himself? I don't know the background of how this program happened, but yeah, like the elevator shaft and the grappling hook and some of the parkour stuff, like going across rooftops when you've got no reason to. Yeah, it looks great for TV, it looks really great, but it's, yeah, quite dangerous. It's not a skill you want to be teaching the layman. I think if I had to put my finger on what the biggest problem with Survivor Man was, it's a combination of not knowing its audience and not knowing what tone it wanted. If it was aimed at couch potato people vaguely interested in survival TV shows, you know, some of the stuff was very useful. If it's aimed at people that are hardcore survival preppers with underground bunkers, a lot of the information is stuff they know already. It's too advanced for the layman, but it's not realistic enough for the ultra survivalist types. So I think the issue is it didn't know who they were making the program for, which again, if you've got a pilot, that's going to be an issue, because it's the sort of footage and the results you get from that pilot that determine what age group finds it good, what demographic is tuning in at that time of day. So I don't know, would it have improved if it got picked up? Potentially. But for me, the big problems with this, where it contradicts itself in its tone and just not knowing the right audience, and I think with a little bit of tweaking it could be really, really good. So, as ever, thank you for joining me on this little view of Survivor Man. I don't know if I'll be doing one of these again. I've got a few other sort of shows that focus on urban survival that they're getting hard to find nowadays. Yeah, difficult to find on DVD, not available on Blu-ray, and I'd like to put some of those on YouTube, but I also don't want to be taken down for copyright. So maybe I'll look into it, I don't know. Be chasing up the production company to put me on TV hopefully tomorrow, and we'll see how that goes. I don't know, I'm trying not to get my hopes up. But as ever, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like it and share and subscribe it. I'm also on Twitter and Facebook, Survivor Mistakes on Facebook as a page, and Zoe Survival over on Twitter. So, as ever, as I finish every single video, thank you very much for watching. Get out there and do the impossible every day.